All right. So thank you very much, and very good morning to everyone. So welcome back to our series of Space for Critical Infrastructure. So I hope everyone had a good summer break. So my name is Cornel Bogaert. I work as Eurizi Project Officer, and together with the network of European regions using space technologies, Nereus, we continue this series where we present satellite-based solutions contributing to the monitoring and the maintenance of critical entities, so providing essential services in the EU. And yeah, if you followed the series before, yeah, then you know that we follow the structure of the proposed EU directive on the resilience of critical entities, which aims to enlarge a previous directive, and it enlarges the scope to 10 different sectors. And today the focus will be on the banking and financial market infrastructures. Now, this topic is also very relevant for the moment. And for that, I would quickly give the floor to my colleague, Grazia Fiore, to tell us a bit more about why this is so relevant. So Grazia, please go ahead.
Yes, so we are currently supporting the organization of a Cassini Hackathon in Barcelona. This is going to take place from the 4th to the 6th of November. This is the first year that the Copernicus Hackathon switched into Cassini Hackathons. And this one is called Space for the Financial World. For the time being, they have identified 3 challenges: enabling green and sustainable investments, innovating financial tools and technologies, and advancing global financial intelligence. An info session will be organized on the 5th of October to start explaining the scope of the hackathon, which is organized by Fundació Privada Knowledge Innovation Market, the Chamber of Commerce of Barcelona, and our member, the Institute of Space Studies of Catalonia. You can register until the 27th of October, and more challenges will be defined together with the financial community in the next weeks. So they will make an assessment of what kind of information they need, and participants will come up with solutions to meet those challenges with the idea of creating sustainable investments and a sustainable finance.
Right, thank you very much. And also, in addition to that, I'll show you here our page on Copernicus and Me, where we also have 2 case studies related to finance and insurance. So this might also help with your ideation, should you be interested. So I will also link that in the chat. Sorry for that. So I think so. Here you go for the chat. And then I think for the we can now move ahead and go to the first speaker of the day. So now I would like to give the floor to Claire Joly, so Head of Innovation Policies for Space.
Sorry, Cornel, sorry to interrupt. Maybe I can introduce also Nereus, because we co-organize the event.
Of course.
So hello to everyone. My name is Margarita Crisaki. I'm the Communication and Project Officer for Nereus. We co-organize together the event with Eurizi. Nereus is the network of European regions using space technologies, and it's the only European association that represents the interests of regions, and in parallel it promotes the benefits of space to the regions and of course to the whole European space community. I wish you a great webinar, and as Cornel said, we encourage everyone to participate in the chat. For us, your feedback is quite important. Thank you.
Thank you, Margarita. So indeed, don't forget to use the chat for any questions. So now over to Claire Joly, and she will tell us a bit more about sustainable finance and space and greening infrastructure. So Claire, if everything's good, you should be able to also share your screen now.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to join you for this webinar today. Thanks for the organizers for the invitation. You should have this here. Voila. So I'm going to tell you about our banking systems, and particularly how important they are in terms of greening infrastructure. So I will share in this presentation some perspectives from recent OECD work we have done on sustainable finance. It will give some context probably for some of the other talks coming up, and it may actually be a useful resource for some of the participants in the hackathon that you just mentioned, Grazia. So I will focus particularly on the growing needs for data to support sustainable finance with a growing role for data analytics using space capabilities. So just so that we're clear in terms of vocabulary, you have here the definition of what is meant by sustainable finance as expressed by the G20 Sustainable Finance Study Group. It can be understood as the financing as well as related institutional and market arrangements that contribute to the achievement of strong, sustainable, balanced and inclusive growth. And this is, of course, linking to the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. So in order to link satellite-based solutions and the banking sector, I will focus on 3 points in this short presentation. First, on some public policy goals and trends concerning sustainable finance. Second, the key issue of implementation of these objectives with the need for data collection, monitoring and evaluation, and of course some implications for the space sector. So in this slide here, and when talking about sustainable finance, a key aspect is the need to focus on real concrete investments. And here I'm talking about infrastructure. In OECD countries and beyond, the needs for investments are very, very important, not only because infrastructure are decaying over time, but also because they are impacted by climate change, with some roads melting in the summer. We had recent examples in the US and parts of Europe, obviously. And of course, there is a push to transition to a low carbon emissions economy. Today, most existing energy and transport infrastructure, in particular, were designed and built for a world of cheap and abundant fossil fuels, contributing to economic growth in many regions of the world, of course, but also to carbon emissions. As a result, around 60% of emissions are hardwired into existing ground infrastructure. The majority of the green investments are today required in transport and power, two critical sectors that are also at the heart of decarbonization strategies. As you can see here in this chart, the investment gaps are very large, with annual investments of around $3.3 to $4.4 trillion for G20 countries, when the needs are almost double that. These numbers do not reflect yet the US and European plans for infrastructure investments, but still, the pathway for low-emission, climate-resilient infrastructure will require exceptional transformation and investments. And public spending will not be sufficient to finance the green transformation. In fact, a significant amount of private investments is required. It is therefore important to align the financial system, banking, capital markets, and insurance with sustainable development. So in order to do that, there are a number of policy initiatives at international level. I have included here a few. I mentioned already the G20 Sustainable Finance Study Group. There is also the G7 and UNEP Financial Center for Sustainability, which is very active. At regional level, we have the European Green Deal and the Sustainable Europe Investment Plan. In 2016, the OECD took a major step to support all of these objectives and initiatives by establishing a Center on Green Finance and Investment. The Center's mission is to help catalyze and support the transition to a green, low-emission and climate-resilient economy. It provides today a global platform for engaging with key players, including many private sector partners. But one key element here with all these initiatives is the actual implementation in terms of making sure all actors have the same vocabulary on what is meant by green investments, definitions, taxonomies, but also most importantly on tracking and monitoring the efforts that public and private stakeholders engage in. So when you have such large-scale and sustained investments representing really billions of euros per year, you need some monitoring tools. And these are the environmental social governance, the ESG criteria. There are a set of standards for a company's operations that socially conscious investors use to assess potential investments and track the sustainability of their investments. a key issue obviously is data, and that's where you see space coming in. When looking at the different families of ESGs, the environmental social governance criteria, there is a strong demand for indicators at all levels, from public institutions and the corporate world. According to the latest report produced for G7 discussions on sustainable finance, the market for ESG criteria tripled in just 5 years. But how do you capture well the impacts on sustainable finance? How are you sure that the work on buildings, on transport infrastructures, on ports are green enough? To make the right investment decisions, there are still many institutional and market barriers. These include, for example, the lack of information or even information asymmetry regarding the actual outcome of sustainable investments. As listed here in the slide, accessibility, coverage, comparability of data on sustainable finance are still an issue, and of course the user capabilities and skills on process and to analyze this data represent also a challenge. So what does it mean for space downstream services? You will see here for illustration a few major index providers that are building ESG criteria. These are really some of the top criteria and providers that are used really by, I would say, real-world finance actors. When you look at these criteria, particularly environmental ones, carbon emissions, renewable energy, it is clear there are opportunities to use satellite capacities to help monitor some of these criteria. Pollution, changes in land use, reforestation are good examples, particularly for large-scale projects and even some urban projects. Earth observations already contribute to monitoring. The OECD, we are exploring and also using satellite data for a number of our environmental indicators, such as air quality and land cover. But for ESG criteria that are guiding investment decisions, there are still some technical challenges that are listed here on the right-hand side, and that really need to be kept in mind. I'm sure some of the next presenters will come back to these aspects. So this is really an introduction, I would say, of these opportunities. I really shared here with you some perspectives on sustainable finance for infrastructure, and I'm sure you're convinced that there are not only major gaps in investments, but also clear opportunities to support some of the investors in their decisions. As we have seen, private efforts and contributions will be a key part of the response with a number of initiatives that are launched at the national and international level since 2015, but we see an acceleration because of the COVID-19 crisis, the Ukraine crisis, and of course, the climate change crisis. This is really a timely topic that Eurysi and Nereus are looking at right now, as Europe needs to transform its energy strategies and adapt urgently to climate change realities. Space will definitely have a role to play in these crucial transitions. There are a number of challenges to resolve, and this is why we really need to have different user communities involved. So with this, I'll stop my presentation. I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the next presentations.
Thank you very much, Claire. And indeed, we will have some more presentations focused on the space segment and what space assets can do for sustainable finance and also to cope with climate risks and climate-related hazards. So I also would like to remind everyone that if they have any questions, please do not hesitate to use the chat. We will have some room at the end of this webinar for addressing the questions. So please make sure of this opportunity. So thanks again, and now we can maybe go and move forward to the next presentation. So now we have Valeria Catalano from USPA, and so she will tell us a bit more about the EU Space Program and what it can offer for finance and especially also the insurance market. So Valeria, please, you can now start your presentation.
Yes, okay. Thanks a lot. My name is Valeria Catalano. I'm working at EUSPA in the Market and Innovation Department. EUSPA is the European Union Agency for the Space Program. We are, let's say, new agency, as we were born as a GSA, the GNSS European agency. We had in charge only Galileo and EGNOS, the European GNSS programs. But then around 1 year and a half ago, we became EUSPA with more activities and managing more space programs like EGNOS. In addition to EGNOS and Galileo, we are in charge also of GovSatcom, that is the governmental communication program, and Copernicus, the Earth observation program. In particular, we are the exploitation manager of EGNOS and Galileo. That means that we are in charge of the operation, the maintenance, the evolution, and the continuous provision of services. But then we also have in charge the security of the 4 space programs, so not only EGNOS and Galileo, but also the security of GovSatcom and Copernicus, and the market development of the 4 space programs. And in particular, regarding Copernicus, our focus are the no, not yet, but okay. Our focus are the other users, so not the Copernicus core users, but like other users, we intend the research and education organization, commercial and private bodies, and non-governmental organizations. So in few words, our objective is to increase the commercial use of the Copernicus data. Now you can go to next slide, please. Okay. In our department, market and innovation department, our activities are organized in several market segments, where insurance and finance is one of these market segments. But what does it mean, insurance and finance? The insurance and market segment includes all the services and products that are provided and used by institutions and organizations in these insurance and financial domains. Our end users are the international and the local financial institution, the private and commercial banks, the stock exchange, and the traders, and so on. But which are the applications that are included in this market segment? There are some applications that are Earth observation application, and another category of application that are the GNSS applications. So we organized this application in 2 clusters. One is the insurance applications, and the other one is the finance applications. Within insurance, there are these 3 applications that you can see in the slide. One of these is the event footprint. This is an application that compares the claims that are received from the clients with the damages that can happen in order to determine the amount of compensation that has to be paid. And the Earth observation data provides a visualization of these damages. Second application is the index production. This is an application where it is possible to compute a numerical index that is based on the Earth observation image analysis. And with the regular monitoring of the area where to compute this numerical index, this application is particularly important for the crops and the livestock insurance. And this application is also very important in remote areas. The third application is this risk modeling, where Earth observation can be used to risk modeling and evaluate the potential losses that can happen in case of extreme events. regarding the second cluster of application, the ones related to finance, there are these commodities trading, where Earth observation can contribute to calculate some indicators that can be used by the organization that are exploiting natural resources in order to develop, for example, their strategies. Another application in this group is risk assessment, where Earth observation can help the investors to better understand the risks in case of they want to initiate an investment. And these are as I was saying, the applications that are Earth observation based. Then there is another set of applications that are the typical GNSS applications, because as you know, the GNSS can be used not only for the navigation and the localization, but also can be used as a timing source for the synchronization of the networks and the transactions, and all the financial transaction has to be, as you can well understand, can be have to be synchronized. So GNSS can be used as a timing source for the synchronization of the financial transactions. If you can go to next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I was saying, we have two groups of application, the Earth observation application and the GNSS. For the Earth observation application, of course, Copernicus Sentinel data are particularly important. For example, in case of the risk assessment, we can, the Sentinel-2 images together with the Sentinel-1 radar capability can be used for all these to retrieve all the information needed for the application that I was mentioning before. Next slide. So, and but let's see which is the market of these Earth observation applications. In this chart, there is a forecast of the insurance market up to 2031. So we can see that this is a growing market that can reach by 2031 around 1 billion of total revenues, and this increase, this high increase, is due to the fact that all these parametric insurance products are growing more and more in the next years. Next slide, please. Then there are the GNSS applications, where Galileo is an important accurate timing source for the synchronization of the network, and the financial transaction based on the European directive are considered critical infrastructure, and an important aspect of the critical infrastructure is to have the resilience of this infrastructure. And we think that Galileo, with this high accuracy, but also with the authentication service, can contribute to the resilience of this critical infrastructure. The banking, the financial transactions. Next slide. And also for the GNSS, we have some analysis of the market. We can see these two graphs in this chart. On the left, there are the shipment of the GNSS devices, and you can see that there was a growth, a peak in 2017. This was due to the enter into force of a directive where the traceability to UTC of all the financial transactions was needed. So this directive increased the GNSS penetration in the financial market. And in terms of revenues, is a market that is quite constant market that doesn't have this peak as in the case of insurance, but is in any case, an important market that, and is particular importance is due to the fact that the financial transactions are considered critical infrastructure. Next slide, please. Then let's go and to some use cases, to present some use cases. Like for example, this insurance of extreme events. There are some solutions that are already developed that for the risk analysis solutions for insurers. Using the Sentinel data, there are some companies that have developed an algorithm that is able to detect changes in the agriculture feed, and together with the historical climate change data is possible, thanks to this algorithm, to predict the climate change in case of extreme events. Next slide, please. Then another use case is this agriculture in insurance. There is already available in the market a toolbox that allows the agriculture insurance company to alleviate the effect of the weather uncertainty when estimating risk. This toolbox is important because it reduces the number of on-site visits for claim verification, reducing, of course, the costs. Next slide, please. And then a third use case is this time stamping for transactions. I was saying about this directive, and in the case of the time stamping for transactions in the past, all the financial time stamped transaction were referring to atomic clocks, but now GNSS is entering into the market, but there are also important challenges for GNSS in order to foster the penetration in this market. And of course, as the USPA, we are working to overcome these challenges in order to foster more and more the GNSS and Galileo penetration, and to increase the resilience of this infrastructure to interference, to jamming, and providing the timing integrity and robustness to GNSS outages and anomalies. With this next slide, I am concluding the presentation, but I would like to inform you that we as a USPA, every 2 years, we organize the user consultation platform. That is an event where we used to meet all the users in order to understand their needs and to transform the needs in requirement. This year, the user consultation platform will be organized in presence and online. The date is the beginning of October for this UCP, so 3rd and 4th of October. The UCP is organized in panel, and of course there will be a panel related to insurance and finance, but I invite you to consult our webpage where all the information, the program, the agenda is available, and you can register and join the event at the beginning of October. With this, I'm concluding, and thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Valeria, and thanks a lot for giving this overview. I think it's clear that space has a big role to play. You showed applications for GNSS, but also for Earth observation, so in the insurance market, also in agriculture. So maybe we can have some questions after all the presentations and have a bit of a discussion there. So again, to everyone, I remind you that you can use the chat, or there's also a Q&A tab if you're more comfortable with that, so you can use that to ask your questions. So now I think I can give the floor to our last speaker of the day. So we go to Sasha Dodge from the ESA Commercialization Gateway to present some green finance use cases and opportunities for space companies. So I think I can also if it's fine for you, I can also share the slides if you like, and then I can just move forward to the presentations, or if you prefer to show the presentation yourself.
If you can share the slides, that would be nice. Thank you very much.
All right, so here we go.
So thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much, Claire and Valeria, for this interesting inputs. I hope I can complement what you have already said with some green finance use cases and also opportunities for space companies. Next slide, please. What is important to have in mind is that climate change and environmental monitoring had been at the heart of space-related activities since decades and had been unique actually in related research and insights. So now these activities become even more important also for the finance industry. And I just try to characterize this a little bit, because we don't only speak about the greening of assets or new green assets, but of a change of the whole financial system for more sustainable allocation of financial resources. So on one hand, we have the impact, or better to say, negative externalities on the environment by companies, which we look at through ESG. But on the other hand, we have climate risk, so the changes in the environment and associated risk for companies. And what is interesting here, we are active here on multiple levels, because this can be on asset level for one certain power plant, it can be on company level, but even portfolio level of financial institutions or country levels. And we will see later an example of the ECB that even central banks are looking at these type of risk nowadays. So we had been looking throughout the workshop last year, and desk research, interviews, especially at ESG, nature-based solutions, and also climate risk and hazards. Next slide, please. I think we have already heard a little bit about ESG, so I will keep this short, but of course, space has the highest added value in the environmental part of it. What is important to keep in mind is that companies try more and more actively to influence ESG strategies. So there's a need for baselines, for monitoring outputs of single company activities or even investment funds. Next slide, please. But the problem is that there's an information asymmetry between investors and corporates. So financial institutions, but also companies, lack processes to report on their operations or investments impact, or how they even depend on nature. Because the main source of company level ESG data is still voluntarily disclosed. So there might be issues about accuracy, coverage, and granularity, as we have heard before. And rating agencies used scoring models, but there is a need for more objective, science-based data. And we have seen a couple of companies rising also in Europe with specialized data sources and alternative data sources, using machine learning, using sensors, but also space-based infrastructure to get better insights. A lot of these, or some of these companies had been also bought by larger American rating agencies, but it just shows the interest for these real-life data. There are also more and more funds focusing on nature, even dominated by public investments, and still relatively small. But with this interest, also interest for monitoring and evaluation of these activities is increasing. And of course, also carbon offset monitoring or bankable solutions are being spoken of. An interesting field will be blue investments, and as the sector is defining blue investment standards, there's also an opportunity to highlight the added value of space and positively influence these standards that are being made. And talking about standards, I mean, the EU taxonomy and SFDR, NFRD will increase further the demand in Europe in the mid and long term for space-related data. Next slide, please. So yeah, as said, and as we've heard before, comparable, science-based, timely, and practical approaches are needed for data. And the opportunities are here in geolocation and ownership, for example, as asset data and attributes are available commercially for only very few sectors. So looking at age, capacity, ownership, but also geospatial coordinates. And the lack of geospatial information in credit and investment deals is one of the major obstacles for the scaling of platform solutions. So there are indirect approaches using Earth observation images and artificial intelligence and creating open and global data sets to characterize these assets and understand ownership structures. Companies will need new IoT and connectivity solutions for digital platforms to understand their own environmental footprint, or looking at air pollution, water pollution, landscape change, biodiversity. And I think especially air pollution and methane had been looked at thoroughly if we think about the energy sector in Europe. Today, and as per a limited resolution of publicly accessible satellite data, private constellations are emerging with commercial business models, which is quite interesting. Of course, environmental data, so these frequent and also inexpensive environmental data are needed in high resolution because ground measurements, if you think about deforestation or water quality, is very time and resource intensive, especially in remote areas. So Earth observation data can map and monitor changes in a scalable and economic way. For example, if you think about, it is estimated that 10% of global tree cover has been lost since the turn of the century, mainly driven by agriculture. So sectors for cattle, oil, soya or cacao are very much an interest of this type of solutions, showing their supply chain. And speaking about this, also here, the lack of geolocation data limits the possibilities for companies, banks, or investors to have a look at this supply chain. So for the environmental monitoring, greenhouse gases, air pollution, deforestation, biodiversity, and water stress are quite important. And this might be of interest for ESG investments, also green bonds and loans. We have seen a couple of KPI and sustainability-linked instruments. They're pretty rare in the market for now, but there might be of further interest. But we could also imagine a stronger impact of space on larger policy initiatives for carbon markets, ETS, taxes, carbon border taxes, or supply chain transparency. If you think about other regions that are less stringent on these environmental data collections. Next slide, please. Here, I just tried to give an overview how relevant this topic will be on the upstream, but also on the downstream side. A lot of countries, but also commercial new satellite constellations are being implemented or will be implemented throughout the next years. Of course, we have Sentinel-5P in Europe for methane, which was very much in the media throughout the last years and during the pandemic. And we have more demand on the data processing side, analyzing data using artificial intelligence and machine learning. And also a lot of initiatives like the spatial finance initiatives of the University of Oxford doing great work, or the World Bank or WWF using space data for their analysis. Next slide, please. So as mentioned before, and I'll try to be short because I see time is running out, climate-related risk and hazards are increasingly also in the agenda of financial institutions. While in the past there was a focus on transition risk, physical risk assessments become more and more important as per the path and intensity of climate-related risk. And as we have heard before, the insurance company has quite good experience in assessing direct damages to assets, properties, but here also production processes can become important. Next slide, please. And also here, this is relevant, obviously, for assets, for certain investments and lending decisions, but even for banks and other financial institutions to stress test their portfolios with different scenarios. It can be important on central bank level for testing the financial stability of a whole system, or even on country levels, thinking about sovereign debts. How much is an economy dependent, especially when they have intensive agriculture, on climate-related risk? And here the Network for Greening the Financial System or the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures are elaborating standards and are also in the need of data providers. Next slide, please. And here's just a short example of the complexity for the ECB doing financial stress testing or climate-related stress testing across the Eurozone. With on the right-hand side on the picture, you see the risk they're looking at from floods to wildfire, but they need asset data, which they have to bring together on portfolio level, bank level, and even central bank level. And as far as I know, the ECB had to buy data outside of Europe for this exercise. Next slide, please. So space has an added value and is feeding into climate data and scenarios. There are various, mainly web-based platforms right now available, and they can be very broad or very specialized. These have to be matched with asset level data, which are quite rare, as in the case of ECG. And then financial tools and analytics produce outputs to quantify often Earth observation data into measurable numbers which can be used by the finance sector. There's still a gap in the climate data coverage for emerging markets, for some African countries, but also for certain types of risk. Stakeholders have also mentioned the lack of forward-looking data. Of course, there are scientific challenges, but they need a higher degree of granularity. Data accessibility, integration, and quantification is a problem. There are various standards, various sources. It's a very manual process for the time being that financial institutions are doing here. And of course, there are also the corporate data gaps, with, as mentioned, missing geolocation and asset level data. It's also important to understand the point-in-time performance of certain assets to really understand their transition plans. Next slide, please. And this is just an overview and a summary of the different use cases per vertical for the ESG part, for the nature-based solution part, and for the climate risk part. And I think we can really see, and we will see, an increase in the demand of space-based solution, especially in the mid and long term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sasha, for your presentation. So I'm just looking at the chat now. So I don't see any questions for now, but maybe I can have a first question, and then yeah, and if anyone has another question, please follow up and just write them down in the chat. But I see that there's a lot of opportunities and there are a lot of space applications. But for instance, if we look at the insurance market and the uptake there, what do you think are the main challenges there? Is it more a problem of awareness, or is it also related to training? So how they can access and use satellite data, related to assessment of climate risks and historical data. So use of historical data, for instance, is that the main challenge in this market, or what are some of the most important barriers? So I don't know who would like to start to take up this question. Maybe it's a good thing to look at Valeria, since you also had covered the market uptake.
Yes, I think an important aspect is, of course, to disseminate this as much as possible, because as I was saying, our objective is to increase the commercial use of Copernicus. So dissemination is important, and not many people are aware of this application and how useful the Earth observation data can be in this market. So it's important, yes, to disseminate and to these opportunities in the financial community. That is not generally speaking a space community. So for this reason, our objective is to increase the use of this commercial use of Copernicus data. I think, yeah, dissemination and awareness is absolutely important, and it's an important challenge.
I see, Claire, you also want to add to that?
Yes, because if I may, we had this type of discussions already 10 years ago, and the world has totally changed. So I think the issue is not about making space more, make users more aware of space, because most of them are totally aware. I mean, we were following the war in Ukraine almost real time, thanks to satellite imagery on TV shows. So the world has changed rapidly. What's really, I think, important here is to make sure that the data that we are producing and space agencies are producing are indeed as easy to use, not by the users that we think of, the banking systems, by the data analytics companies that have risen, and they're the ones that are building up the products that are then used by the banks and other finance companies that we talked about. So we need to take into account this new world. Almost anybody can go online and try to get access to the data. And our colleagues from ESA, I think, have done a remarkable job in trying to make accessible their data sets. There's still some gaps and some issues. So in order to really advance the conversation, I think we should stop thinking that we need to convince the banks, because banks in insurance, they know about the products, they know that they can do a lot. What we need to make sure is to have the right conversations, I would say, with the intermediaries, the ones that are building the value on top of the satellite imagery. They're the ones that are really changing the game, I would say, in the banking system right now. That's just a comment here.
I would absolutely agree with you. It's very much a practical question, I think, and also a question of cost and benefits. So for the insurance sector, it's quite intrinsic to use models if they're worth it, and they have, I think, most of the experience, perhaps followed by a multilateral development bank, and then slowly some of this is going into the financial sector right now with changing regulations. But yeah, what we have seen is really the practical access to data. People don't know where to go, how to get this data, how to get it on their computer. Can they upload their asset level data, or is it going against privacy concerns, how to use it? So these were the main questions that we at least saw during the last years, and that very much practical training here is needed, and good databases that can take over this manual work, which is quite surprising, actually.
And if I may just rebound on what you just said, Sasha, I think one of the big gaps that we see in terms of making sure that the users are getting access, it's really I would say the digital infrastructure that need to be set up, the use of clouds, for instance. There's a big revolution here taking place right now also, and this is a bit outside the traditional, I would say, builders of satellites, but this is really, I would say, the key aspect here in terms of making sure that the data gets to the right people who then create value. And I would say North America, very advanced in many cases, and there's still some efforts to take place here in Europe, I would say. But particularly on this, I would say, cornerstone of data dissemination. And for this, again, I have to salute ESA. I mean, you've been doing great in terms of trying indeed to put together the value chains and making sure that some of these big gaps are identified.
Yeah.
Yes, please, if you would like to.
No, if possible, I would like to reply to
Sure.
Stefano because I've Spinaci because I've seen that he's
Yes.
asking about the possibility to use GNSS and Earth observation data in smartphone. We as a USPA, of course, we are analyzing a lot of synergetic application where it's possible to use GNSS and Earth observation. We publish, it's available online, this GNSS and Earth observation market report, where there is an extensive list of applications where these two data, GNSS and Earth observation, are used. And there is a section on consumer solution where you will find information on the use of this synergetic data in the smartphone. So I will invite you to download this document that is the use part observation and GNSS market report.
Okay, perfect. I also linked it here in the chat, so
okay,
you can
fantastic.
also look at there. So Margrethe, I also saw that you had the question, so if you would like to.
Yes, very quickly. Thank you, Cornel. Also a comment for Claire. Thank you, Claire, for your presentation. And actually, what is important here is that sustainability in the banking sector matters more than ever, especially after the crisis of 2008. And there we can see how Earth observation data can play a crucial role. This is just a comment. And then for Valeria, I would like to ask you, Valeria, if you are in discussion or if you have any new use cases with the European Central Bank, which uses the SWIFT system. It's a system that allows communication for cross-border payments. So that is a big project. I don't know if you have any discussions or you are in the beginning, but that could be like an area where the data can really prove themselves, if I could say that way.
Personally speaking, I'm not in contact with the European Bank, but probably other colleagues in the department. In any case, I will check, and it will be important to, if you can put us as EUSPA in contact with them. So on this we can follow up.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Thanks.
All right. So I don't know if there are any other comments. But for now I don't see any other questions. So I would also like to take this opportunity already to promote our next event, which will take place next month, so on the 27th of October, and that one will be on energy and transport. So you can also already register for that event. And again, I use here the chat. So if you would like to go ahead and register, you can have a look about what it is, and yeah, you can find all the information about that event. I think we can close the session unless there is any other comments. So Margrethe, I don't know if you would also like to say a few words, or if we can close the session.
I think we can close the session. Thank you, Cornel, and thank everyone who participated.
Thanks a lot. And again, just a reminder that we will also publish the recording and also a summary of this webinar, so you can find all the details on our website, so on the Nereus website and also on the Eurisi website. So thanks for now. Thanks for joining us, and hope to see you soon. So hope to see you next month during the next session. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.